In 2014, Ohio State alumna Sampriti Bhattacharyya launched startup HydroSwarm to commercialize the football-sized autonomous underwater drone she helped invent while she was an MIT PhD student, I might add. Ultimately, the startup didn't stay afloat, but like all successful entrepreneurs, Sampriti was undeterred. She was committed to helping bring to life a new sustainable ocean economy enabled by building scalable tools and machines. In 2020, she launched Navier, a next-generation maritime company whose mission is to build the most compelling zero-emission marine vessels. By adapting technology from automotive and aerospace, they're making electric hydrofoiling more accessible and efficient. Last spring, they began delivering their first product to customers, the N30 Pioneer Edition. I am beyond thrilled she is with me today, and I can't wait to learn more about this entrepreneurial Buckeye engineer and her company's electric flying boats. Sampriti, welcome to Enginuity.
Thanks for having me.
So you are the third of several alumni we'll be chatting with on our Enginuity Entrepreneur Tour. I'm starting each of our entrepreneur episodes with this question. Did you have a eureka moment or a special influence in your life that led you to entrepreneurship?
Well, I don't think I had any, one specific role model or a single eureka moment. Although I would say that, Tony Stark, Iron Man, was a great influence. I even dedicated my PhD thesis at MIT to a Marvel superhero. So, that's a funny joke. But to be specific, what drove me towards entrepreneurship was a fascination for solving hard problems. I mean, the kind, if you solve them, that can fundamentally change the world. So, when I was a kid, I wasn't really thinking about, okay, how to build $1 billion SaaS company or, anything like that, right? I was actually more obsessed with, understanding the universe and how things work, how to explore unknown. Like I would read a lot of science fiction, the Apollo mission, the Mars mission, personal computers, microchips, internet, all those breakthroughs, like human inventions, like those inspired me. And as my journey started in Fermilab. I was still at Fermilab when I was at OSU, and I got into OSU because I wanted to study aerospace engineering. My first love was space. But going back to what really led me to get into startups was, while I was at NASA Ames in Silicon Valley, I really saw how technology and entrepreneurship intersected, right? And what became obvious to me is if you really want to push boundaries and turn bold ideas to reality, I think, building a company is often the best way to do it.
So from Tony Stark, you already had me at Iron Man, to NASA Ames. You've had such a journey that has led you to entrepreneurship. So I mentioned your first company, HydroSwarm, in the intro, and you launched it shortly after earning your master's in aeronautical and aerospace engineering here at Ohio State. Now,
Right.
I don't like labeling, unsuccessful entrepreneurial efforts as failures, but I believe they're learning opportunities. So I'd like you to tell our audience a little bit about HydroSwarm and that time in your career and really what you learned about entrepreneurship, about technology, about Tony Stark, whatever you want to say.
Yeah, for sure. Uh, I was always fascinated by space. I mean, that was my first love, whether, building rovers or, doing flight controls at NASA. Um, I always thought I would work in, space engineering. But it was at MIT I got into MIT and my research was actually building underwater drones for nuclear reactors to monitor boiling water reactors. And it was in 2014 when the Malaysian Airlines got lost. And I was like, wait, people are talking about going to Mars and Moon. And here we are, we have a massive airplane that gets lost in the ocean, and we just don't have tools to figure out anything about it. Um, so that was really, in this case, the eureka moment for getting into like, the maritime space. And I was like, wow, but from the physics of it, I mean, it is a solvable problem. Why can't we have distributed sensor network that can be implemented and pick up the signal of the black box and so on? Uh, and aerial drones were quite a thing then. So I realized those do not exist, and I was like building this underwater drones for the reactors. I was like, well, somebody should build that. Well, maybe I could. I'm already building this, right? And the funny thing is that whenever you see a problem, I think the natural instinct is to say, oh, somebody should be solving it. But we should be asking like, but why can't I, right? I mean, at the end, all problems are solved by humans, and you could be that person who solved that problem, right? Um, anyway, so the goal with Hydroswarm was actually to build a next generation maritime company, with autonomous fleets, and the big vision hasn't really changed as I'm building Navier. So one of the best quotes by Bezos that I really like is he says, be stubborn on the vision, but flexible in the details. So, my vision hasn't changed, which is like building a next generation American maritime company with, autonomous fleets at scale. But while trying to get to that vision, I definitely had my fair share of failures. The first step was Hydroswarm. Um, so, and if I look back, there were many learnings, right? And, happy to share a few of them. For example, if you are doing a very technical startup, make sure you understand the logistics of setting up a big business, legal and IP, right? I mean, I lost my IP to a major defense contractor, which made the whole thing very complicated. It was very soul draining, I would say. Um, Second is do whatever it takes to build a very compelling team. As somebody who's very technical, you have this thing that I can figure out everything, but building a company is very different than doing a PhD thesis. So building, do whatever it takes to get the best people onboarded early, and the third is like, stay focused. I mean, take bite-sized pieces, and don't rush. Things will, fall into space. But, I think every setback in a way, is a step towards what I'm building now.
So I love these three components, which is thinking about the IP and the legal, which I don't think a lot of engineers even really
Yeah.
consider sometimes. You have the
Mhm.
team, and I think, projects, you focus that students love that team building exercise, and then stay focused. I also really appreciated you saying this social impact, like someone should be doing this. Why
Mm.
shouldn't I? And that vision, I think is inspiring. Just thinking about the experience, thinking about the wisdom of your words. As you and your team were building the super cool electric boats that had this hydrofoil concept, which glides above the water, and I've, of course, watched some of the videos and I'm in awe. You've probably told your Navier story hundreds of times in terms of how you thought about this IP, this type of technology, but I hope you don't mind sharing it with our audience at this point.
I never get bored talking about Navier. Um, you know, um, One of the things about building a hard company is that uh, it's hard to build, a company like that involves big machines, productions, and all that. But the best thing is that you remember the mission, and that's what gets you excited, to get up and go work on it. And it's always awesome to share that with the rest of the world, because people not often think about, this area of innovation. So, when it comes to Navier, I think the outside world perception might be that, we are building some cool boats, but it's much more than that, right? It is really building a next generation American maritime company and restoring American leadership in maritime innovation. U.S. used to really lead, till World War II, but we are number 11 right now. So if you look at this industry, right, it's one of the oldest industry. Civilization was built around waterways. 70% of the planet is water, and we have barely modernized, any of it. And we have seen in the last decades, right, and century, like how the highways, the railways have shaped our economy. The waterways somehow used to be utilized, but now it's very underutilized real estate when you look at places like Bay Area, New York, and so on. There's some ferries, but for most part, the traffic is on the bridges. So when it comes to Navier, it's really, really rethinking this industry and taking a look at how can we build better vessels? What are the key technology drivers that can really disrupt this industry? When you see what disrupted, land, air, and space, which is like, cheaper, faster computing, scalable manufacturing, new sources and better, sources of energy, right? When you apply that to maritime, what you realize is that it's not an incremental improvement, it's a step function change. That is, suddenly you can build vessels that are not a little bit better, but a step function better in terms of efficiency, in terms of cost of operation, and that can fundamentally change how we move people and goods on the water. So that's the exciting part about it, right? That the two key reasons that the waterways are underutilized is because it costs 15 times to 20 times more expensive than cars to move on the water, and it's you also get seasick, for example. If you solve those problems, suddenly you unlock a whole new kind of scalable waterborne transportation that was never possible before. Every marina can become a transportation hub, and the impact of that will be no less than highways or airways, right? And that's what is exciting. So even though we are starting with very cool, high-end electric, luxury boats, that's literally our road star. That's our introduction to the world, the technology. But obviously, the goal is much broader and much bigger.
So as you think about this next generation and disruption, I love that terminology, disrupting the concept of this maritime vehicles, moving goods between one place and another with water as a source of transportation. There's gotta be some competition in this space. And so thinking about that, what sets Navier apart from either what's out there currently? You mentioned some of the older technology, but even the people is it something else?
So there's obviously competition, right? And competition is good because it means that, the technology is in the right place for disruption and innovation. There is competition in hydrofoiling too. I mean, not in the US, but in Europe and elsewhere. We are not the only company building hydrofoiling boats. But I think here where we are different is that it's not about a hydrofoiling boat. What we are building at Navier is we are building a maritime tech stack. It is a stack of various proprietary technologies, starting from the vessel platform to think about our flight control system, to autonomy, to our powertrains, right? And this will scale as we develop various kinds of platform, various kind of vessels, right? And that kind of vertical integration will enable us to build a very, very scalable company. And what I really am proud is that we have done something incredible in 2.5 years. We have gone from building, starting to build a prototype to delivering our first production vessel to a customer, which you'd never see in hardware companies like ours. And not only that, our technology is in the U.S. Navy vessels, which is a testament to the state-of-the-art engineering we have out here. So I think it is not one thing. It is the overall strategy and how we are going about building this company.
I mean, so with this strategy, and you mentioned 2.5 years, I love this concept of the tech stack. Not thinking of it as just a boat, but
Mhm.
really the computational technology that enables this transportation. So if you think about all the things that you and your team have accomplished, and you've done it in, as you mentioned, in a relatively short amount of time for a hardware company, I'm sure you're always thinking about the future. And so, what does the next year or two look like as you think about the company and its next step?
Yeah, I mean, the pace at which we have moved has been pretty incredible. But in many ways, we are just getting started, right? So over the next year or two, the focus is on scaling, both in terms of production, but also in as well as in market adoption, right? So first is we are delivering boats. We have proven the technology, and now it is getting more and more boats out there. Really refining the experience, taking the customer feedback, and also that really helps us in design for manufacturing and scaling. Scaling production is people don't appreciate. But it is 100 times harder problem than prototyping. It's a very complex, problem, but it is a fun one to solve. The second is, as I mentioned, Navi is actually a platform. We started with this, very high-end luxury space, for recreational and hospitality. But what we have built is fundamentally the most advanced electric boat of this category ever. And where we are at is that, we want to get this vessel, really impact in areas where, you can actually see the impact at scale, like, urban mobility, waterborne public transport, and obviously in defense application. So a lot of our effort over the next couple of years will be really laying the groundwork for these broader applications, whether that is pilot programs, strategic partnerships, or further technology advancements, right? Um, and um, and finally, the other part is obviously continuing our R&D, continuing our next generation, vessel developments. I mean, as well as, developing our software stack, which is, all this data that we are getting from the field with our, deployed production boats. That's really going to help us in further developing our software stack. So I'm very excited about the software-driven approach that we are taking. It will be the first of its kind in this sector for sure. So yeah, there is a couple exciting years ahead.
It sounds like not just a couple, but some very exciting years beyond just a couple, because you're going to launch, you're going to scale, and then we're going to sit back and say, see, it started somewhere in a place called Columbus, Ohio. And I'm a little biased, being that we are at Ohio State, but I'm also an engineer, and I think engineers, honestly, make excellent entrepreneurs. So when we think about Ohio State, or really any university for that matter, how do we encourage more engineers to consider a path like yours, but to consider entrepreneurship, thinking about a company, finding the hard problems to solve? Like, what are the things that we can do at a university, at Ohio State, to really assist students in that way?
Yeah, great question. I think I think engineers have an incredible unfair advantage in entrepreneurship because um, you're trained to break down very complex problem, think systematically and really build solutions from first principles. I think first principle thinking, especially my background is also in physics, so I think that's very important. Um, but building a successful company is so much more than just engineering skills. And this is something, if I could go back, I would try to learn earlier. So I would say that, what universities can really do is expose engineering students to entrepreneurship early. I mean, not just as a career path, but like also as a mindset, So how do you integrate the business fundamentals like storytelling, understanding product market fit, and finances? Like no business can operate, without your bottom line, your revenue, your, unit, like your cost metrics and all of that, making sense, right? So I think it's really important to introduce engineers to that, as well as to the idea of team building. I think that's important. Second, I think just not focus on I think classes like just not projects in the class, but like how can you give people more crazy ideas and see how they can think outside the box? And I think exposing that kind of um, you know uh, sessions to students, that will be really fun, right? Where they can try hard things and they can fail and make failure more as a part of the curriculum, right? Like you can try things, you can fail, and that mindset will really help them to try over and over again till things work. So I think really trying to help them have a mindset where they can fail, but they will also be bold enough to take a big leap. So that's number two. Number three, I think, is very important. I think it's important to connect students who are on those paths early to real world entrepreneurs because you can learn so much, and I have learned myself so much from other founders and those who have been on that path, and getting the critical feedback. When even at this stage, I reach out to people I call my mentors. I think that is also very useful. So those three few things, and overall, I would say that engineers are great as entrepreneurs.
I agree. And the three kind of things that universities should do actually resonate with myself. And so I'm going to turn it. Thinking about the student, knowing what you know now, what advice would you give yourself when you were in Ohio State? If you can go back in time and you're like looking at yourself as an Ohio State grad student, what advice would you give yourself?
I didn't know much about startups when I was in Ohio State. But the first thing, coming to advice, I think um, what I would say is um, don't beat yourself up like on small failures, setbacks, and such. Life is an adventure, so you got to be kind to yourself along the way. Um, that's probably one very important advice I'd go back and tell myself. Um, the second one is like, don't be scared to be bold and reach out. Now I am, as you know, I have quite an adventurous path coming from India to, doing a company, the kind of company I'm doing. So for most part, I'm bold, but I think there are always opportunities to not be shy and reach out and make a step forward.
Great advice, great advice. So I recently came across this stat. Only around 15% of tech startup founders are female, and less than 2% of venture funding goes to women founders, which is way too low. And even less are under 40. So, like it or not, Sampriti, you're a role model, someone our students can surely look to as inspiration. We are so proud you're a Buckeye, an engineering Buckeye, and I'm so grateful that we had the chance to chat.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me. This was a fun conversation, and I look forward to, staying in touch.
Thanks for listening to Enginuity. Stay up to date on all the amazing innovation and groundbreaking research happening within the Ohio State University College of Engineering by connecting with us on LinkedIn, Facebook, Instagram, Threads, and X.